Good morning. I'm Thad Rohr, the Superintendent at Friendswood ISD, and here with our Chief Financial Officer, Amber Petrie. And what we'd like to do with you today is to overview the 2020 bond.
School district tax rates are comprised of two components, maintenance and operations and interest and sinking. Funds collected through the maintenance and operations, or M&O rate, are used for day-to-day operations. These items include teacher salaries, classroom supplies, utilities, and transportation, to name a few. Funds collected through the interest and sinking, or INS rate, pay for debt service cost. These items include capital expenditures, land, construction or renovation, technology, new buses, and other large purchases. When bond elections occur, the focus and impact is on the INS tax rate. Funds collected from INS tax rates are deposited to the district's debt service fund, which is responsible for the repayment of debt. Voter approval is required for bonds to be sold and these funds to be used. By law, the rate cannot exceed 50 cents per $100 of valuation, and the INS rate revenue cannot be used for recurring expenses. The current INS rate for Friendswood ISD is 27.59 cents. Now we'll go over a little bit of the bond history of Friendswood ISD. The 2020 bond election is the fourth election for Friendswood ISD over the past 23 years. Going back to November 1997, the voters approved a $17.8 million bond for a tax increase of 9.7 cents. December 2005 saw an approved $5.5 million bond for a zero tax impact. Lastly, the November 2007 election, which was 13 years ago, brought forth a successful bond of $96.7 million for a tax increase of 19 cents. The 2007 bond provided for the construction of a new Friendswood Junior High, natatorium, cafeteria addition, classroom, and office additions at the high school, and various other renovations and technology throughout the district. This chart represents the tax rate history for the past 11 years of Friendswood ISD. The rate has been fairly steady for several years at $1.36.7. The 2016 rate saw a 2-cent increase from a tax rate election, but was lowered by 2 cents the very next year. House Bill 3 of the 86th legislative session in 2019 brought forth mandated tax rate compression. FISD's overall tax rate dropped 10.76 cents for tax year 2019, lowering the rate to $1.25.94. The Board of Trustees recently approved the 2020 tax rate at $1.25.94.
Just as a review of the bond process, a Citizens Advisory Committee was put together, approved a number of citizens across our district as well as administrators, teachers, parents, community leaders, and together they came with a unanimous recommendation for this 2020 bond. On February 10th of 2020, the Board of Trustees unanimously voted to call a bond election based on the recommendation of the committee. On March 23rd, as I discussed before, the board voted to postpone the election due to COVID-19 into November. The demographics have not changed, but just as a review, this slide shows you the capacity of each one of our elementary schools. It measures all students who live within the confines of Friendswood ISD, and looks at developments that are on the books and are moving forward. Friendswood Trails, Avalon, Sterling Creek, and also projects forward at some possible other developments, Georgetown. You don't see the junior high or high school on this demographic slide because as we look out beyond this 10-year time frame, the capacity for Friendswood Junior High and High School will provide for what's needed for grow out. First were school additions, a 4-classroom addition to Westwood, a 4-classroom addition to Bales, and a 6-classroom addition to Winsong to anticipate and address that anticipated growth. What also was recommended was a new Klein Elementary, a new 900-student campus on our West Ranch site that's currently owned by Friendswood ISD. This would replace the existing Klein Elementary School, which is 45 years old. As we look at Klein was built as an open concept school and then was moved into closing in the classrooms. So it has smaller classroom sizes, narrow corridors, low ceilings, issues with HVAC, conditioning those spaces. It's built within the middle of a neighborhood, which causes issues. And also, as you look at our zoning, where our students, where our growth is, it's on the south side. So as the committee, the board looked at this, it made financial sense to replace the Klein Elementary with a new Klein, thus the recommendation on the West Ranch. What would we do with the existing Klein Elementary? If this bond were approved by our voters, the options for that would be to demo Klein and retain the property for future expansion in some way for our district, demo Klein and sell the property, sell the building and property as it is for development, rent the property or building, or utilize the property for future educational support function needs. As our bond committee looked at utilization of the current building, there weren't any recommendations for expansion into the building as it is now. So if the bond were passed, we would create a committee to quickly take a look at these options and move forward with one of the four. This shows you, if the bond were passed, what the capacities would look like out through 2029. And as you can see, the number of students projected in each of these areas, zoned as they are. You can see on the graphic in a K5, the new elementary at West Ranch, Winsong area would be K5, Bales and Westwood would remain as they are. It allows us to maintain our four-school configuration and still be able to handle the growth that's projected out the next 10 years. Next would be to look at high school additions and renovations. First would be the construction of a new auditorium. I'll get to the existing auditorium and some of the issues that we have with it in just a minute. But it's really a domino effect. Once the new auditorium would be built, if it were approved, we would renovate the existing auditorium into fine arts space for choir and band, which would allow us to expand the square footage needed for our numbers of students in both of those programs. We would renovate the existing fine arts wing into career tech spaces. We've had to turn away career tech students, and also in our strategic plan, our goal to, and looking at individual students' differences and success for them, we want to expand our offerings to allow spaces that can better educate those students. Also would be a new competition gym with storage and locker room space, which would expand us into 3 gyms. There would be existing locker room renovations so that locker room space would expand for all of our sports. And also we would reconfigure and add athletic field space for our athletic programs. The auditorium currently serves many students, 980 fine arts students in a year. We run through around 21,000 attendees in a year. All of you who are part of our district know that fine arts is a very important part of our culture and our community. The auditorium is 50 years old and fallen below our UIL state standards of spaces. The stage does not meet the UIL standard. We have issues with our seating, issues with the lighting, electrical systems that are in the auditorium that don't allow us to create a modern show. Instead of renovating this space, which a fly space could not be part of a renovation, it can't structurally hold that. Thus, they're recommended for the new auditorium. You understand the domino effect of how this square footage can be expanded by utilizing current spaces and renovating them. Conceptual drawing of what the new spaces might look like, where possibly the competition gym locker room addition could be, where the auditorium and new black box space would be, and then also just the renovation areas as well as the new sports fields. On the left of this diagram you see properties that the board has acquired over the last several years to allow for expansion of the high school space that could be moved into fields and needed retention space for areas that are covered up. Part of this bond would be district-wide projects, safety and security improvements, technology improvements for infrastructure. You know, with the last bond being 13 years ago, priority maintenance projects that aren't part of the yearly budget for our maintenance staff. And then also to reimburse the land purchases for the areas we just looked at on the map. This slide gives you an idea of the total cost for each one of the bond projects. This is inclusive of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the technology that would be part of that, turnkey, basically, for each one of those areas, for a proposed bond total of $128,275,000. This ballot would be in two propositions. Proposition A include everything but technology. Proposition B would technology. Recent legislation requires technology to be pulled out as its own proposition.
How much will the bond cost taxpayers? The maximum tax rate of the 2020 bond election is projected to be no more than 10 cents per $100 of valuation. Using the average taxable value of a home in Friendswood ISD of $349,373, the monthly tax increase is $29.11. If the election is successful, the overall tax rate will still be below the 13-year average from $1.34.98 to a projected $1.33.87. How will this election impact homeowners age 65 and older? Taxes for homeowners age 65 and older will not increase above their current exemption ceiling. The addition of the 2020 bond to the district's projected 2021 tax rate brings a total projected 2021 tax rate to $1.33.87. The projected 2021 rate includes an anticipated 2-cent decrease in the M&O rate, assuming no changes are made to current legislation and property values continue to grow 5% for tax year 2021.
Thank you for your time in reviewing this information with us, and remember, together we are mighty.